But back to the grizzly bear thing. Dumbest idea ever. So explain to me, Josh, what just happened with the grizzly bear situation, like the advancement of it.
So Senate Bill 1305 had passed out of its policy committee of origin, called the Senate Natural Resources Committee, by a 5-2 vote, with all 5 Democrats voting yes and both Republicans voting no.
Oh, you had to say Democrat, huh?
Just for the sake of clarity, yes, and accountability. And so from there, it moves on to the Senate.
Had to make it political.
It passed on to the Senate Appropriations Committee, and that committee's singular exclusive focus is on the fiscal effects of a piece of legislation. What is it going to cost the state, and how is that legislation, and whatever that legislation entails, how is that going to ultimately be funded?
Is there an estimate on the price?
There is. There's the one-time estimate of $5 million, and this was data that was provided to the legislature by the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. So $5 million to undertake the study that the legislation would obligate the department to do, and then $4 million annually ongoing.
So every year?
Correct.
So $5 million off the top, $4 million every year. And is there an estimate time frame on the study to be done and complete, and an estimate time of when they would possibly bring grizzly here?
So originally,
and where would they put them?
So originally the legislation read that the department would be expected to develop a roadmap with the intent to introduce the grizzly into California. And it would give the department until June 30th of 2027 to provide that report to both the legislature and the California Fish and Game Commission. During the hearing in the Senate Natural Resources Committee, the author did take the suggested amendments of lessening the ambition, is how I would put it, of the legislation, so that it does not presume the conclusion that yes, California can support a grizzly bear population, but rather determine whether or not California can support a grizzly bear population. So it lowered the ambition in the language from a foregone conclusion to a we'll see, at least in spirit. And then secondarily, it also gave the department more time. So now the legislation expects that the department provide the study by June 30th of 2030. Okay. And so with that in mind, they would presumably provide their findings and that feasibility report. And then the legislature and the commission could then determine whether or not it would be feasible based on the findings of the department. So, now, presumably, the department would determine if grizzlies can, in fact, live in California, and then 2, where specifically, what regions of the state might suitably host grizzlies, and then 3, what population each of those regions might be able to support. And if their study, if their research is similar to that which was conducted by the California Grizzly Alliance, then it would be perhaps potentially 3 regions of the state. The northwest corner of the state, so from the Oregon border all along the California coast, and all of that country up in Del Norte.
So then what happens if the grizzly bear up there decides, I want to go to Oregon?
Well, I would say it's similar to how California came to be populated by gray wolves.
So Oregon could do nothing.
Correct.
Look out, Oregon.
Just as California did not try and intervene in the dispersal of OR7.
So as soon as that bear, because you know it's going to be collared, crosses the border, somebody's going to introduce would it be a bill? What is it? Legislation that protects them as a what they do with the wolf when it came here? They automatically filed something.
Yeah, so typically it would be an action that is undertaken by the commission, the Fish and Game Commission of every state. So you're making reference to what happened, how California reacted to the one documented, one known wolf that we had, OR7, which was a dispersing male, came down to California, and almost immediately after that,
Went back.
yes, but the Fish and Game Commission undertook an effort to list the gray wolf under the California Endangered Species Act. And what that does, that obviously has a lot of legal implications where no one may take that wolf. And take is not just to kill, it's to capture, pursue, or to attempt to capture, pursue, or kill.
So if nobody would have done that, could that wolf have legally been shot?
Potentially, because it wouldn't be protected, and I'm not aware of any regulation that existed in either statute, Title 14, the Fish and Game Code, which is law, or in departmental regulations. So theoretically, I believe it could have been taken.
Okay, so northeast,
just as like as an example, whitetail could theoretically be taken because in regulation there's no specification as to what species of deer can be taken in California. It identifies it by its scientific.
Is that an elk?
Well, you're talking about this?
Yeah.
I don't know.
There's elk up here.
There is?
Yeah, I get them on camera.
Do you really?
Yeah, couple bulls.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. Actually,
is there a documented herd up here?
There's no elk up here.
I was going to say.
There is.
There is? Yeah. Really?
Yeah. Okay, so northwestern or northeastern part of the state?
Northwestern part of the state.
So, okay, so all the pot growers, hey,
Del Norte, Trinity County, all of that fairly rugged, fairly remote country.
So pot growers, beware.
And then the second region that the California...
That might not be such a bad thing.
The second region that the California Grizzly Alliance identified would be the Central and Southern Sierras. The third region that they suggested...
I guess I just gave away where I was.
Yes, exactly.
No, actually, I'm in Southern California right now.
Well, in Southern California, they identified the transverse ranges.
East of Fresno.
Correct.
Okay. Now, how big of an area is that?
I don't remember the total number of square miles that they identified, but it would be basically inclusive of Yosemite and then northward.
So they want to put them in Yosemite?
I don't know that they identified Yosemite National Park by name. Most likely not, obviously because of the concentrations of people.
Oh, but I hope they go there.
Of the people.
I hope they go to Half Dome. And there'll be so many morons there trying to take a picture with it. Like Yellowstone.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't wait. I'm actually starting to change my mind on all this. Like, let's just let it happen. Let's just get on board and watch the disaster happen. Because it's going to backfire. That's just, I don't ever see it not. So, okay, so after your Fresno area, where? The
transverse ranges. Okay. And so that's the little mountain range that basically runs from west to east, east to west. It starts at the coast, Ventura County, and moves eastward across I-5. That's what we call the Grapevine, all the way into eastern Kern County to the lower foothills at the very southern tip of the Sierras.
How far is that area from populated areas?
Not very far at all. You've got, you know, especially with the LA basin continuing to grow and expand.
All right, we're on the next spot, but we want to finish this conversation. So, is there a plan? Fly, get out. Is there a plan of how many grizzly bears will they start out with?
I don't.
Do they have like they're going to bring two?
I don't recall.
Obviously, if they're going to spread them out in those regions, there's going to be multiple.
Right. I don't recall if the study, because it was a feasibility study. How possible is it?
So it's obviously going to be probably a handful, because they're not going to just stick a bear down there without a breeder, right?
Right. I mean, the presumption is that they would want to establish a breeding population for a couple of reasons.
They
Otherwise,
don't want to?
They would.
Yeah.
Absolutely. For a couple of reasons. One, you're not going to be able to establish a population without no less than one boar and a few sows. But then two, for the sake of trying to reduce the risk of human conflict from livestock and crop depredation, public safety encounters and incidents, you're going to want that boar to occupy an area where there are sows. Otherwise, he is going to continue to travel until he finds sows. And that naturally is going to increase the likelihood of him running into trouble in a state with 40 million people,
it's not going to help
in
the
a state
conflict issue
that has been converted into 40% of its land mass being a purpose for agriculture. So you're going to want those bears, as the proponents of this plan, you're going to want those bears to stay put, relatively speaking, within the bigger, broader region of their introduction. So yes, you absolutely, for both of those
but nothing
reasons,
in the plan that says how many.
I don't recall that they prescribed an initial population. They did, because it was a feasibility study. It's what would it look like, where might these bears live, and how many bears do we believe that those regions could support. It was determining the feasibility, ecological and practical feasibility of it. It wasn't a project plan of this is how everything you would do step by step, and these are the numbers of bears, and this is the state that you would get them from. I don't believe it went into that direction and that degree of detail. They did determine, based on habitat suitability modeling and other determinations, that cumulatively those three regions could support just under 1,200 grizzlies at its maximum point. They're not recommending that 1,200 grizzlies be captured and translocated to those three, just that is the potential, essentially, carrying capacity.
So how many grizzly bears are in Yellowstone?
In Yellowstone, I don't recall. I know that there are between 14 and 2,000 in Montana, because they're fairly distributed from Alberta through Glacier, all the way through the Bob Marshall Wilderness, down the spine of the Rockies into Yellowstone and down into Grand Tetons.
So what's the population of people there?
I believe Montana is ranked 44th least or most populated, and there are fewer people in the state of Montana than there are in the metropolis of Sacramento and all the surrounding areas. So the whole state of Montana has fewer people than the greater Sacramento area.
So it sounds like a great idea to take up a grizzly bear that is known to be, stand its ground, can be aggressive. They're not like a black bear where they're going to find a way out.
Right.
And, grizzly bear, obviously, 2 grizzly bear attacks, just a few weeks ago, one in Yellowstone Park and one in Glacier National Forest, right?
Glacier National Park, yes. And that was a fatal attack, unfortunately. The first fatality from a grizzly encounter in Glacier since the mid to late 90s, I believe. And what's interesting about what's going on with the grizzly in Montana is that the grizzlies are beginning to disperse eastward from the Rocky Mountains and the higher elevation country out onto the Great Plains. And people may be surprised by that because, there's this tendency to assume that grizzlies live in the woods, they live at the higher elevations, and that is historically not the case. The grizzlies were low elevation oriented. Why? Well, because winters are less harsh, food is more abundant, there's a greater variety of food sources at the lower elevations. And so especially when we're talking about the northern plains and the Rockies, the grizzlies were highly dependent on the very large bison herds where they would follow the bison.
So explain to anybody that's going to listen to this, the grizzly bear in California were in the valleys, low elevation, but some of the last that were killed in the higher elevation. So were those bears up there because they wanted to be, or were they forced up there as the population and people started to basically push them out? So yes, they probably were like, I don't want to be where people are, you know, so they tried to get away.
That's exactly right. As I put it, so the last grizzly documented to have been killed in California was in eastern Tulare County. Tulare County is a portion of the Central Valley, but it runs eastward up into the Sierra Nevada foothills, all the way up into the Sierra Nevada mountains. And the last one that was ever killed was in eastern Tulare, up in at the higher elevation. And then the last one ever seen was in Sequoia National Forest, also east of the Central Valley. That is, as I put it, the fact that the last two grizzlies ever seen or killed and seen respectively is a function of pressure, not habitat preference. Black bears historically occupied the higher elevation country. Why? Because they are a subordinate apex predator. They basically defer to the grizzly.
So when the grizzly bear gets put here and they start to establish themselves, you know, over a number of years, I think what that will do is push the black bear out of the higher elevation, down into the lower elevation, creating more human conflict.
There's a lot of logic behind that, yes, because black bears being a subordinate apex predator, black bears being relatively risk averse, they're going to avoid a confrontation in most every scenario if they can. They are going to want to avoid any kind of confrontation with a grizzly, because it could mean their life.
So they don't get along?
They do not get along.
They're not
they
like
are not
cuddling
BFFs.
and like having like little hangouts and like just their buddies. They don't coexist very well.
Not very well.
How does a grizzly
usually
bear
end badly for the black bear.
How does a grizzly bear interact with lions? How do they get along?
So the mountain lion is also what's called a subordinate apex predator. So in areas where they co-occupy.
See why I talk to this guy? Because he just makes me sound like a moron, dude. It's like opening a dictionary and like having my phone read it to me. That's why I hang out with him.
So where lions and grizzlies co-occupy,
you just can't have a short conversation with
That's
Josh.
true.
So like,
you better have
how
a lot
long
of
was
time
our phone
on your
call
hands.
last night?
A couple hours.
2-hour call, no big deal. And then like the night before that, I think it was 3 hours.
And only because you wanted to stay out of the doghouse.
I'm always in the doghouse.
It was like you had a curfew. Hey, I gotta go. I don't want to
My
get in
wife
trouble
was
with
coming
my
home
wife.
and I'm like, oh shit, Josh, I gotta go.
Exactly.
She's seeing some cheating on her or something. All right, so lion interactions with bear.
So
and then
they're gonna defer to the grizzly as well, being a support. Their lions are even more risk averse than black bear. I would personally say. The interaction between lions and grizzlies don't typically end as badly for the lion as it would for the black bear. Is lion mortality from grizzly possible? Yes. Is it as well documented as black bear? No.
I thought grizzly bears actively hunted and killed black bears.
They do. That's what I'm saying.
No, I mean, remember that guy?
Oh yes, that guy. Oh yeah, as in prey upon them. They're
prey.
So no, yeah, so
grizzly bear will kill a black bear.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
will a grizzly try and kill a black bear every opportunity he gets? Absolutely. They're members of the predator guild. They're co-members. The grizzly is the dominant apex. The black bear is the subordinate apex.
It's more like an opportunity.
Absolutely, it's very opportunistic.
It's not like I'm going to go eat a bear today.
They're not hunting for black bear like they would hunt for a deer fawn or an elk calf, where there's an intentional effort for purposes of procuring food. You know,
All right.
there's no
So back to the
selectivity
lions.
bias.
We just went down that rabbit hole. Let's go back
Yeah,
to
yeah,
lions.
yes.
We get distracted a lot.
So with lions, where the conflict occurs is primarily in that fancy word that begins with the letter K, kleptoparasitism, where grizzlies, using their very powerful sense of smell, will seek out a lion kill. The lion is going to give up its kill to a grizzly every time. That grizzly is then going to be able to make the most of that kill, and the lion is going to move on and most likely attempt to make another kill to feed itself again. So that's where you've got that indirect competitive pressure, and you've got the kleptoparasitism going on with lions. So lions are not going to be nearly as impacted by a grizzly introduction in California as they are likely to be with the immigration of the dispersal of wolves into California. Lions, there is an abundant amount of documented mortality, lion mortality by wolves. The Grand Teton study is one of the ones that I cite most often, where there has been 0% kitten recruitment, meaning kittens surviving into and entering into the breeding population. Wolves are that hard on lions. And after all, that is why lions have both the anatomy and the instinct to climb a tree. They're not like a leopard where they climb a tree and they use that as their ambush tactic for trying to catch a deer.
So a grizzly bear is not going to necessarily impact a lion population, but the wolf will impact the lion population.
Far more significantly, absolutely.
So how will the grizzly bear affect wolf populations?
Primarily through kleptoparasitism, like what we're seeing in the greater Yellowstone ecosystem. So, and it's really interesting dynamic. Prior to the introduction of the wolves in the greater Yellowstone ecosystem, there was approximately 17,000 elk in that region, and primarily encompassing Yellowstone National Park, but then extending broadly beyond that. Approximately 17,000 head of elk. In 1995, when the wolves were introduced, we started to see a decline in the elk population, down to, as the estimates are, between 2,000 to 4,000, depending on what researcher you ask. Now, the grizzlies traditionally had, when they come out of what most people call hibernation, which is actually called torpor. It's not quite clinically, physiologically hibernation. They're more like drowsy rather than being asleep, is how to simplify that. It's called seasonal lethargy, is a simple term for it. When they come out of torpor, traditionally they would primarily focus on winter kill, scavenging on winter kill. Now that the wolf packs are in the GYE, the greater Yellowstone ecosystem, they have been taking a larger percentage of the elk that might normally succumb to winter, the old, the infirm, the weak, etc. So now the grizzlies have shifted from relying primarily on winter kill to now preying primarily on elk calves. And research demonstrates that as many as 1 out of every 5 elk calves born die to grizzlies. And again, to be perfectly clear, it's not of every 5 elk calves that die, 1 dies from a grizzly. No, it's 1 out of every 5 elk calves born is killed by a grizzly. So 20% of the elk calf crop born in a given year are now killed and fed upon by the grizzlies, because grizzlies are adapting. And they certainly, while they're omnivorous, they certainly prefer meat. And so if they can't do it by scavenging on winter kill, then they shift their initial spring dietary effort to elk calf. Something else that the grizzlies have really taken advantage of, and this is generally what's called trophic cascade, a transfer of energy across an ecosystem from one species to the next, is grizzlies, despite being a dominant apex predator, again, they're not above scavenging and pushing other animals off their kills. And so the wolves, also being adaptable, being the intelligent animals that they are, they've had to shift their predatory effort from elk, given the decline of the elk population and the GYE, to now preying very, I wouldn't say necessarily primarily, but very significantly on the bison, the existing bison population in the GYE, exclusively in Yellowstone National Park. The grizzlies have been taking advantage of that, and by pushing the wolves off of their bison kills. Now, the difference in how wolves respond to grizzly kleptoparasitism is really different than how a lion responds to a grizzly pushing it off of its kill. Lions being a cat, cats being highly efficient killers, highly efficient predators, there's less risk involved when a lion makes a predation attempt, as opposed to a wolf pack making a predation attempt. Why? What? Because lions hunt by ambush, and so they're counting on their selected prey animal not knowing that they're there until the last second, until ideally it's too late.
They're just stealth
to put up a fight. Exactly right.
Whereas a wolf's just going to chase you until you're exhausted.
Right. They're coursing
and I've
predators.
caught that on my cameras with those wolves, where they're chasing those
After the deer, yes.
on multiple cameras, miles apart.
So lions are ambush predators. They sneak up and they try and catch the prey animal unawares. Wolves are coursers. They use their endurance to try and run that animal to exhaustion. That animal knows it's being chased by those wolves. That deer does not know it is being stalked by that lion. So that's just a very important distinction number one. And then distinction number two is wild felines are among the most efficient killers. When it gets down to the mechanics of killing an animal, felines are really, really good at it. You really are hard pressed to find a wild animal family that is less capable or least capable of killing an animal mechanically than a canine. So the canines and the members of the hyena families are among the worst. So they will try and disable that animal by biting it on its rear legs to basically impair the locomotion, the ability of that animal to move. Yeah. Most of the power comes from the hind legs of an ungulate, you know?
No, they go for like that tendon.
Yes, yeah, exactly. The tendons and the hams and all of that. And then, you know, they'll try and grab it.
I mean, that's what they're doing with the Caribbean cattle.
That's exactly right. And so, and then they will try and, you know, bring it down. Once they get it off of its legs, bring it down, and then they're biting at it. They may try and disembowel it, you know, remove all of the viscera, the guts. It's not a painless way of dying, and it's not quick. During that entire event, that predation event, that elk, that bison has the opportunity at any time, whether it's prior to the point of exhaustion or at the point of exhaustion, to turn around and face that pack of wolves. And a lot of times what they'll do is you'll find that they will go into a body of water, a river system, where they've got the advantage, the height advantage, where the wolf is now maybe up to its neck.
I've seen videos like that.
Absolutely.
And they'll kind of like, it's almost like the wolf gonna wait there until that animal just freezes and gets exhausted.
Sometimes you'll find that they do try and they just wait there on the banks. But in that whole entire interaction, the wolves assume a higher degree of risk to themselves by trying to take that animal. And again, compare that to the lion stalking on it upon that animal and then being a more mechanically efficient killer. Well, so getting back to the moral of all of this, when that grizzly steals that lion kill, that lion is more likely to go and more immediately try and kill again so that it doesn't go without dinner. Whereas those wolves are more likely to, you know, back off, cede the kill to the grizzly, and then when the grizzly gets his fill and maybe he moves on, maybe he camps out on it, but then they go and try and continue to feed off of whatever the grizzly did not eat.
It kind of goes back to like the wolf here in California and why they're killing cattle. Because it's easier.
They're opportunists.
They know that, like, hey, I'm going to use less energy, less effort, and more reward
And
killing
lower
that
risk.
cow,
And lower risk.
low risk. And so they, it doesn't take long to teach your dog how to sit right at your house. Teach them pretty quick. They're highly intelligent. That wolf or a group of wolves kills 1 or 2 calves or a cow or whatever, and man, they learn pretty dang quick. Hey, this is easy, and oh, nobody's doing anything. There's no education that works. You're going to put up some.
Well, exactly right.
You're going to chase them with a drone, or what do they call that?
Exactly right.
Flattery,
Yeah, flattery, the flagging and all that sort of thing. And that's also an important distinction that people need to understand when it comes to where that predator occupies in kind of the ladder, if you will. Are they a dominant apex predator? Are they a subordinate apex predator? Dominant apex predators like wolves and grizzlies are less easily educated than lions and black bear. Lions and black bear demonstrate a heightened degree of risk aversion. They don't want to get into a physical confrontation. Grizzlies and wolves are more difficult to discourage from bad behavior because of of kind of the niche that they occupy, the role that they fulfill, and where their place is on the metaphorical totem pole, so to speak. And so it is going to require both effective and consistent amount of effort in terms of what's called aversion conditioning, the fancy word for education. Wolves are not going to be easily discouraged from trying to eat the easiest types of food sources out there. And it needs to be effective, and it needs to be constant.
It's like me.
You're
want to hit the drive-through? You want to hit the drive-through, quick and easy?
That's right.
Or do I want to go home and slave over the counter?
And it's important to point out that this is not just theoretical. We're not projecting this. We saw it very firsthand with the Bayam Sayo pack.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
The California Department of Fish and Wildlife expended 18,000 man-hours by bringing a very materially large crew of wardens.
Yeah, I went up there.
So you saw firsthand.
But
the guys riding around on quads, the deployment of drones, the deployment of drones with
went up there
as obnoxious music as possible.
Yeah.
And every night, the wolves
should have played like some Lady Gaga or something, So, but from what I'm starting to learn, Sierra Valley got hammered, but it seems like it's worse up in Siskiyou.
The whaleback pack that is in eastern Siskiyou County was the most notorious, if you want to put a political characterization to it. The whaleback pack was the pack that was most prone to depredation until Bayam Sayo, and then that changed everything. Well, the department, after their efforts, their very significant effort, it wasn't a token effort on the part of the department by any means, in my personal opinion, but it failed nonetheless. And so the department did make the decision that they needed to essentially remove this pack, and so they did remove the 4 primary oldest members of that pack to essentially dissolve that pack for the sake of the livestock industry in Sierra Valley.
Just took too long.
Well, and that's the thing is, the department obviously is put in a precarious position where they're not going to be able to satisfy either side of the ideological spectrum. They took longer than they should have from the perspective of maybe the ranching and hunting perspective. I don't know that the anti-hunting and preservation oriented community would necessarily say that they didn't wait long enough.
Well, they still disagree with that decision of doing it.
Yes, they definitely do. You're exactly right. That's why the department has found itself, kind of caught in the middle where they're not really pleasing anybody.
Well, I was surprised they did it. It's like, wow, they actually did it.
I was actually surprised as well. I mean, it was a pragmatic decision. because it would have depleted the livestock compensation fund just by one pack, just in one region of the state.
Yeah.
And ultimately, that's not going to be sustainable, because at the end of the day, there is a concerted effort to try and encourage a degree of coexistence, irrespective of a person's opinion.
But isn't coexisting, part of coexisting is lethal removal? I personally think the wolves would probably thrive better if the problem wolves were eliminated.
Well, yes,
I think in the long run, and I think it's about hound hunting, I think hound hunting kept more bears alive as far as being not killed and thrown away in the trash. We have more human conflict with black bears now than ever, especially with the hound hunting gone. I think that when hound hunting was allowed and was legal, there was less conflict in mountain communities and less bears being killed for basically no reason, like just going to complete waste. I felt like, in a way, it kept more bears alive than it did killing them. And I know that sounds weird and probably may not make any sense, but like...
Well, yes, and I mean, that makes a lot of sense for a number of reasons. There's a couple of reasons that are kind of at the forefront of my thought process. Number one is when it comes to bear behavior, bears being, again, a subordinate apex predator, aversion conditioning is likely to be more efficacious, more efficient, more effective with the use of hounds, because you're, as I like to put it, you could be running the bear back up into the mountains, so to speak. When they come out into, establishing pioneering populations, continuing to increase their distribution, moving into areas that they didn't historically occupy, that was historically occupied by grizzlies, those are where hunters hunt first. They're more easily accessible. They've got road systems and things of that for houndsmen to be able to go into, and so those bears can be run deeper into the woods and further away from areas of human settlement
and educated.
Yeah, so that's where the education comes in, the aversion conditioning. And then ecologically speaking, because of the fact that the catching of a bear, whether it's bayed on the ground or it's put up a tree, it allows that houndsman or woman to get into much closer proximity to that bear. And by doing so, you're able to identify the bear sex pretty readily. Is it a boar? Is it a sow? If it's a sow, is it what's the reproductive status of that sow? Is she nursing? Does she have cubs with her? It is illegal to take a sow with cubs. And in the houndsman ethos, we frown upon the taking of any sow to begin with. And so more often than not, a boar is going to be taken, if a bear is even going to be taken at all by a houndsman. We don't feed and clean up after our hounds all year long and raise and train and exercise those hounds all year long just to tag out on the first big bear that we catch, the big boar that we catch. We're going to wait until the last second, if we even are inclined to want to take a bear.
Yeah.
More often than not, hound hunters have a tendency towards non-consumptive interaction with bears. We just like to catch them with our dogs and love on our dogs, tell them how proud we are of them. Shoot that bear with a camera, and then leash up our dogs and catch that bear again another day. It's like catch and release fishing. If you take that bear, will it taste good? Yes. If you take that trout, will it taste good? Also, yes. But if you take that bear, you know that you can't catch that bear again. And so by being selective, if we are going to take that bear, it has a tendency towards a boar, and a larger, more mature boar, and that boar is typically going to be the dominant boar in that area. When you take that boar out of that area, it creates a vacuum. And so all those subadult boars, the teenage boars, then infill into that vacuum. And it's going to take a while for them to determine kind of whose territory that now is. And what that does is that infill diminishes the dispersal of all of those subadult boars who are more likely to go down into those areas of human settlement where they may get themselves into trouble. Such as that younger boar, actually I don't know that it's a boar, that younger bear that in the last couple of days has been seen just outside of Davis, California.
On the campus.
Near an elementary school in the day, and then on the campus of UC Davis, I believe last night or the night before.
All right, we're ready to get out
Absolutely.
for a walk.
And I'm sure everyone's getting tired of listening to me talk.
Ha!